Welcome, ladies and gentlemen, to episode 6 of your weekly movie rewind. Here, as always, is me, your host, Garret Neal, and you're listening to Radio DePaul, Chicago's College Connection. Thank you to Miss Ellie Goulding for that lovely introduction. In my opinion, that song is the best thing to come out of the 50 Shades franchise, which we will be talking about all too much today on our show, because as always we'll be starting with the box office, going to some news, not too much news over the last week that I want to talk about, but there's always a few things, so we'll get into those. And boy, have we got some releases for you this week. Although, looking at the box office numbers, apparently a fair amount of people were all about this last week's releases, even though they weren't for me. So, without further ado, let's get right into those box office numbers. Coming in at number 1 is 50 Shades Freed. Yeah. Came in with a very cool $38.5 million over the weekend. 98.1 international, and that brings the franchise total gross to over, if you want to break out the, well, I guess no, Dr. Evil wouldn't quite work here, but it brings the franchise international total gross to over $1 billion. It's times like these that I question the world and how we ended up spending $1 billion to watch two actors with little chemistry almost have sex several times. Although, to be fair, I have not seen any of these films, so I'm only going off what people have told me and what clips I have seen. And, I didn't think I would like Twilight, but I totally did. I was all about it, so maybe I would fit in that group, but man, US $38.8 million worth of people went to see that this weekend. Still was the lowest out of the three. 46 million was what 50 Shades Darker made. I was hoping for a little bit more of a drop-off, but it's alright. If it keeps tracking, if it tracks the same way that 50 Shades Darker did, then 50 Shades Freed will make about $95 million in its run. That would, the world's a strange place, I guess. To each their own. I will try hard not to judge, but I'm doing a lot of judging this week. I guess there just wasn't a lot out. Peter Rabbit coming in at number 2 with about 25 million. And Sony expected 16, so blowing their expectations out of the water. But this one, I gotta raise a few eyebrows here, because we're looking, Paddington 2 just came out like a month ago, and that made 11 million on its opening weekend, and by all accounts, all rating systems, it's supposed to be a far, far better film. I can't, it's hard for me to say, because again, I haven't seen either of these. Paddington 2, I would have gone to see, except I haven't seen the first one yet still, so I didn't really feel comfortable going to see the second one. Peter Rabbit, honestly, for all three of this weekend's big opening films, we got some snow here in the Chicago area, and I could have gone to see the movies, but 50 Shades was the only one that was at the closest theater to me, and I wasn't going to see that because I haven't seen the first two, so there's my excuse there. And the other ones, I would have had to go a little farther, and while I still could have, it started snowing, and so I just used that as an excuse to not do it and put off my movie viewing duties for one more week. Except this week, I'm going all out. I'm going to see everything this weekend. I'm very excited because I'm ready to talk about it. But I can't, because we have to talk about how more people went to see Peter Rabbit than Paddington 2, and that makes me sad. I don't know. I've seen Most people I've seen have said they did not like Peter Rabbit. A lot of the criticism is based around how it's not like the book, so maybe if you come in with no expectations around the book, it's not as bad. I don't know. Coming in at number 3 is our last new movie of the week, is the 1517 to Paris with $12.5 million, and that one actually performed a little under what it was projected to make, but still good enough for number 3, which, it kind of it does make sense at a certain level that these new movies were coming in at the top because we hadn't really had a big movie come out in a long while, and so I get people were just kind of wanting to see something else, but I maybe would have liked those numbers to be a little bit less for 50 Shades and Peter Rabbit, but it is what it is. So 1517, of course, Clint Eastwood, and he got in the 3 main Americans that were involved in this event to play themselves in the story of them stopping the terrorist attack on the train in France. And from most of what I've heard about this one, it's that part of the film is really cool where they stop that thing, that event happens, and it's just not really quite enough to keep you sustained for the full runtime of the film, which I completely understand, and that's kind of what I was thinking when I first saw it. I was like, that sounds like a really cool moment, but I don't know what the rest of the story would be, and apparently there wasn't really a whole lot, or at least the story around it, the way it was told was not super interesting. And coming in, we got some familiar faces coming in at number 4 and 5. Good old Jumanji knocked out of the top spot, but not quite out of the top 5 yet. Still hanging in there. That one made $10 million this weekend. God, it's just, man, bringing its total gross up to $365.9 million over its run, and that is bringing it within $8 million of Spider-Man 2, of being Sony's second highest domestic earner of all time, and it moved into number 3 in Sony's international list as its international gross got up to about $881 million, passing Spectre, which I'm surprised Spectre made that much money, but there you go, James Bond. He's got some moving power, I guess. And Spider-Man Homecoming. So Jumanji still making moves. Another one that's making moves is The Greatest Showman, dropping from number 4 all the way down to number 5. Wow, it's incredible. It dropped only 16.3%. This film never ceases to amaze me. Made $6.5 million this weekend, bringing its total gross up to $146.6 million. And in a week or two, it's going to pass La La Land for all-time gross, which, obviously, La La Land wasn't like a smash or anything, but it's funny to think when you get La La Land, which made a $1.51 in its runtime, $151 million. Just that had obviously all the Oscar buzz, and it was so critically acclaimed. And Greatest Showman did get nominated for an Oscar, Best Original Song. This Is Me, one of my favorites. I love it. I love all the soundtrack because I like the movie. But it obviously doesn't really have the Oscar buzz La La Land did, and certainly it didn't get the critical acclaim, although clearly fans have been loving it because it's hanging around. So it's interesting to see that, Greatest Showman, it's gonna make more than La La Land, which I again goes to show for me. I think Oscars should consider broadening their horizons sometimes as to what is Oscar worthy, but that's not going to happen anytime soon. And I know I'm probably in the minority for that. And that's the top 5. Some other thing that I thought would be interesting to bring up: the Oscar-nominated short films, which I have seen all of. Those were all very good. All those were very entertaining. If you want to go to the DePaulia online, you can check out what I wrote about them there. And none of them were bad, although there were some that I liked more than others. There's none I thought were bad. And that one made $695 $1,000 this weekend in just under 200 theaters. Came in at number 25 in the box office. That doesn't really matter, but I just thought that was interesting. And top per screen is going to be the Golden Exits, which was in one screen, and it obviously did well in that one screen because it made $11,719 on that one screen. This film actually, I think it debuted at why can't I remember the name of the film festival? Sundance. Wow, that was terrible. Last year, not this year. This year's one's just ended a few weeks ago, but it actually was at the one last year, and it's just getting released in theaters now. Just shows how it takes these things a while to come around. It's about an intersectional narrative of two families in Brooklyn. That one screen, by the way, was in New York, so that probably had something to do with it. And yeah, that's it's just always fun to look at the per screen again because it gets you an idea of what might be some of the big independent films coming up. With that, we will move on to the news section. It's going to be there just wasn't. There's usually a few stories that I really like to bite into. There's always like something you can talk about, but since I just had this hour to go over like a week's worth of stories, I really like to find some good ones that you can really chew on and think deeply on. But there wasn't just a whole lot that I wanted to talk about. There was this weird controversy around Peter Rabbit where there was a joke made in the film about people with allergies, and like there's this one character who has allergies, and a lot of the other characters saying, oh, he's just making it up because he wants to get out of doing stuff or because he wants sympathy or whatever. And again, I haven't seen the film, but apparently there's actually a scene where like the character Peter Rabbit addresses the camera and says, this is just a joke, we don't want to get letters for this. But letters they did get. There were a bunch of people who were really angry about this moment in this film, and I honestly just thought it was a little ridiculous. And if you're going to get your opinion on food allergies from Peter Rabbit, then I think you have a lot to learn about how to read media texts and how they affect you. And then once you learn about how they affect you, you can maybe not let them influence you quite as much. Maybe, I don't know. And it's also just a piece of news that I think like came up in the spur of the moment because it was a slow news week. And it's something, I mean, no one's going to be talking about this in a week. People aren't even talking about it now, hardly. So that was something. Kim Possible, if you remember that show, I do. I'm a fan. Kim's great. Ron Stoppable, awesome. Got the naked mole rat. He's great. Even the villains. The villains were hilarious. Great show. They're making a live action version of it now because you know what? Disney wants to, and money and stuff. So that's happening. Is it going to be good? Who knows? Is it going to be bad? Who knows? But it's happening. They're making a new standalone X-Men film. This came out just today, starring Kitty Pryde as the main person. This is via The Hollywood Reporter, and it's got Brian Michael Bendis attached to it as one of the writers. He was also one of the comic book writers, and Tim Miller, who's notable for directing Deadpool, so he's got that comic book directing experience coming in. And I mean, it's the code name is apparently 143, which that X-Men issue which coordinates with an X-Men issue where Kitty Pryde was like the main character, and it was a weird thing where she fought like an alien or something. I don't know. I haven't read it. I'm not too into comics personally. I love comic book movies a lot of the time, but I don't know the stories behind them often. Again, could be interesting, but it's kind of so far out at this point. It's hard to really say anything. I mean, obviously there's a lot of ways that these two industries are different, but might be nice if movie companies and distributors and producers started adapting the way video games are kind of moving towards. Video games used to be bad at this as well, but more recently there's been a trend towards like announcing a game and then being like, oh, by the way, it's coming out in 6 months, or it's coming out in 4 months, or it's coming out in 8 months or whatever, rather than, oh, here's a screenshot, or here's a logo, and we don't know when it's coming out, maybe like a few years, or here's like a teaser, oh, it's coming out in 3 years, because then it's like it's just it's a lot for the company to like keep that hype up for so long, and it's also a lot to like people are just gonna kind of forget about it. A lot can change if you release certain information about your product at a few years or a year and a half out of release. A lot can change, and then audiences will be like, oh, well, we saw such and such in this trailer, and oh, now the graphics are worse, or now the story's a little different, or like what happened to this character. And you'll see this in movies too, where you get that initial teaser trailer, and then when the movie comes out, people will be like, oh, well, this was here in this trailer, but that scene wasn't in the movie. This line of dialogue wasn't in the movie. You changed the background here, or this was edited differently. And maybe I think like people want to get ahead of the leaks, and they're like, if we announce it now, no one's gonna like leak it later when we're not ready. So let's just get it out of the way now. But now that it's out there, I feel like there's this kind of expectation for the theater, or for the theater, the producers and the distributor to kind of come through with this film, even if they get to a certain point, even during script writing or something where it's not happening. There's a little, just because it's out there, there's maybe not a lot, but there's a little extra pressure for them to just make sure at least something gets out there to appease the fan base that is now ready for this because you put it out there. I don't know. That's kind of reading too much into this, but pretty much all the news this week is just like quick mentions of releases that might be getting in the future. So that was just one thought I had on kind of this whole thing. And the last one is this one was hard to find out about. Willy Wonka. If you are you familiar with Willy Wonka? Had a great film back in the day with oh my god, I can't even. This is just a terrible day for me. What was his name? Wow, I'm gonna. This is terrible, but I'm gonna figure it out. But regardless, they are coming out with a new one. So if you all remember the last remake, the Tim Burton one, Gene Wilder. Wow, that was just atrocious that I cannot remember him. That movie from 1971 is an all-time classic. I mean, I haven't seen it in a while, but even I remember so much of that movie. I mean, obviously Gene Wilder himself was phenomenal, and then we got that, because that one's Willy Wonka in the Chocolate Factory. Then we got Charlie in the Chocolate Factory in 2005. Tim Burton, Johnny Depp. This one not quite as good. Wow, oh my god, just looking at IMDb right now, this one, the remake, the Tim Burton remake, actually has a higher Metascore rating than the original one. Just goes to show, always take those with a large grain of salt. I mean, honestly, when I saw the Tim Burton one as a kid, I thought it was pretty funny and pretty fun, and I liked the strangeness of it, but having gone back and seen it a few times since then, it doesn't hold up as well, and is certainly not as memorable as the original one by any means. Again, I've only seen that one once, maybe twice, and I remember so much more of it than Charlie in the Chocolate Factory. And now they're making another one, which is supposed to be a prequel, which I don't know if I'm okay with that, because you know what? I don't really want to know where the Oompa Loompas came from, because if I'm being honest, there is no way that that answer is something that I'm okay with. Like, there's no... I don't know if they've been captured and are working against their will. I don't know, like, if he found there somewhere. I cannot imagine a way for him to have this large workforce. Does he pay them? Like, I don't want to know the answers to these questions. I don't want to know how he makes his candy. That's part of the whole, like, mystery, where it's just sometimes it's good to just not know. Sometimes it's best just love it. It's mystical, it's magic, it's a kids movie, and it's just out there. It's like, the more you think about it, like, there's so many messed up things that could be behind these weird orange people that work for this candy maker, and they sing songs and they trap kids. It's like, oh my gosh, like, I don't want to know the backstory to that, if I'm being honest. But they're doing it. The one good thing is, speaking of Paddington, the aforementioned, it's got the Paddington director attached to it, Paul King. So, again, haven't seen either Paddington films, but by all accounts are great. And now, maybe he could do something with this. Who knows? I think it is a bad decision not just to do a remake, but especially to do a prequel. I think that's a no-no. That's the thing, is that, like, a remake, like, it's going to make money because it has that name attached to it, and there will be people who, even if they think it's going to be bad, or even if they don't think it looks good, or if they know it's bad from other reviews, that they'll go see it just because it has that name attached to it. And, I mean, I will too. Probably, whenever this comes out in, like, 5 years. But it's always going to be compared to the original film, which at this point is impossible to beat. Even if that film has flaws, it's just so highly held in nostalgia land at this point that people like me, who haven't seen that film in years, are just like, oh my god, it's the best thing ever. I remember the whole thing, but it's like, really, I only remember the good parts. But it's just impossible to beat that, like, legend status that film has. So even if it might become a box office success, it probably won't be a critical success. But at the end of the day, that's not really what matters. It's all about them box office numbers. Okay, I said there wasn't a lot of news. There wasn't, but I still spent a ton of time talking about it because I went off on tangent, as I am wont to do. But we will take a break from that, and then we come back and talk about some Black Panthers and some claymation stuff and a religious movie, because, why not? So stick around for all that fun jazz. I'm Garret Neal, here with your weekly movie rewind, and you're listening to Radio DePaul, Chicago's College Connection. We'll be right back. Chicago's College Connection. Welcome back, everybody, to your weekly movie rewind. I'm Garret Neal, as always, and you are listening to Radio DePaul, Chicago's College Connection, as you just heard from that lovely intro. And so we already talked about the box office and some news, and I ranted about movies being announced way before they're going to be released and how that annoys me. And now we're going to talk about the new releases this week, and we got another week with 3. We're finally out of those doldrums in the beginning of the year, and we're getting into the hot stuff, man. We're getting into the heat of the movie season. Not quite May. I mean, May is like really when it's like gets spicy. But, I mean, March, I'm so pumped for March. So many movies that I'm excited for in March. Doesn't mean they're going to be good. A lot of them are probably going to suck. But I'm still excited. And, like, even now, these next few weeks, we got Annihilation next week. This week, of course, we have Sampson, the story of a young Hebrew with supernatural strength. Of course, this is the most anticipated film of the weekend. Sampson coming in at a hot 5.0 on IMDb. Gonna be great. Not really, probably not. I don't know. I'm not one to, obviously, this is a story from the Bible. Samson loses the love of his life to Philistine prince and used his strength to defend his people, and fights back against the Palestinians to avenge his love and God. I'm not one to write off religious movies, even if I don't personally believe in the faith being represented in the film. Because Gods of Egypt or Prince of Egypt, not Gods of Egypt. No, Prince of Egypt. I really love that film. I think it's beautifully done and well made in so many ways. And there are plenty of actually really well done religious films. Doesn't look like this is going to be one of them, but who knows? Also, does not have any ratings on IMDb, so that's kind of how a lot of these religious movies like to do it. Just kind of throw it out there at the last minute, and or on Rotten Tomatoes, no Rotten Tomatoes rating. It does have that 5 on IMDb, so just kind of throw it out there, and then people will see it because religious films generally have that built-in audience. There was an Islamic film that came out a week or so ago. The animation looked kind of cool in it, but I didn't. Well, I'll see if I can pull it up while I'm babbling away. But yeah, that one I don't know if that one will crack the top 5, but the next one will hopefully. Early Man, this one has a little bit more behind it than Sampson. Early Man, new one from Aardman. Always will have a soft spot for Aardman because of Shaun the Sheep and Wallace and Gromit. Of course, those shorts, man. Those shorts were incredible. And the movie was not too bad either. It wasn't as good as the shorts, the original 3 shorts, but it was still fun. And then they made a 4th short, which I thought was a little strange. It wasn't my favorite, but it was still nice. And Chicken Run, oh my god, oh, so great. I haven't seen the Shaun the Sheep movie, but I should, because it's supposed to be really good. They also made Flushed Away. That one, of course, Aardman is well known for their claymation animation style, which looks great, and just like the effort that has to go into this stuff, like, oh, blows my mind. I would never have the patience to do this kind of step-by-step stuff, like as detailed as they do. Flushed Away was actually used a lot of CGI because I believe that was made when they had a fire in their studio, and so they couldn't do it with claymation because everything would burn down. And I was like, not cool, and they couldn't do it. So then they made it with CGI, but it still had that look to it. And Flushed Away was pretty good. And most recently with Shaun the Sheep. Before that, they had Pirates Band of Misfits, which I was hoping was going to be good. I thought, I did see it after it was in theaters, and it was like, was not quite as good as I wanted it to be. It wasn't terrible, but, oh, wow, there was a new Rampage trailer. Random breaking news. Not really huge news, but it has a gorilla in it, so I'm automatically on board with Rampage. Going back to Early Man, it's and Early Man is getting similar ratings to what Pirates Band of Misfits got. So I'm worried that it's going to be like along the same lines where it's kind of it's not bad, but it's just not great. Band of Misfits has a 6.7 on IMDb. Early Man 6.3, so it's actually lower there, which that's not a good sign. Has an 83% on Rotten Tomatoes. And Pirates Band of Misfits has find out really quickly. I'm going to stall. Has an 86. So it's actually got less ratings, worse ratings, less ratings. It's got worse ratings. It has less ratings too, obviously, because it hasn't been fully released yet. But worse ratings of Pirates Band of Misfits, I thought was like not great, but it was interesting. And I can never really hate these films just because I love the style. But man, I hope it's not bad. I'm very much still looking forward to seeing it this weekend. But of course, the real thing we're anticipating this weekend is Black Panther. Black Panther has a ton of reviews out and ratings and stuff. I'm not going to go through them personally just because I don't want to see them. I know that's kind of ironic because there's probably some of these films that give ratings for that people are like, well, I didn't want to know that. I just wanted to kind of go into it blind. Sorry. I mean, I guess in the end it doesn't really make a huge difference because no matter what, you're always going into the film with some preconceived notion. But I still don't want to see the ratings and don't want to watch the reviews of Black Panther. And this is definitely one of the more, like, because it's so big, there's more people I think that are like wary of being spoiled. Or I don't think there's too many people going into Early Man or Sampson. They're like, whoa, why would you tell me that rating? Now I got like preconceived notions of what like I don't think that's as much of a problem. Black Panther currently tracking to make $165 million its opening weekend, which would right away put it obviously number one that week. It's going to be number one, no question about that. But number one of the year, which right now that title belongs to Insidious: The Last Key. And yeah, enjoy that last week, Insidious. I mean, to be fair, it's been there since like the first week of the year. So, it's got its solid run. But yeah, safe to say that's not going to be the top 10 at the end of the year, probably. And Black Panther is going to shoot right up there with just one weekend. If it hits that $165 million, that will put it at number one for top superhero debut film. Like, number one of, like, this isn't Black Panther 3. Obviously, we did see him in Civil War. That was the first official time we saw him. But this is the first Black Panther film. Right now, the highest grossing superhero debut film was Deadpool at $132 million. This would shoot that out of the water. And according to Box Office Mojo, whatever their parameters are for comic book movies, this would actually put it at number 6 of highest opening for all comic book movies. Obviously, just domestic. And not adjusted for inflation, clearly, but still, that's like it's trending so well. Even though I haven't been paying attention, it's got so much positive buzz around it. And let's look at superhero films. It would be. Superhero films, it would come in at, openings. Yeah, it would come in at number 6, just above Dark Knight Rises, which opened to $160.8 million, and right below Batman vs Superman, which opened to $166 million. Good job, crew. But it'll be open, like, it might even surpass it. I think it'll probably surpass that. That's my bold prediction. It's going to be the 5th highest opening superhero film of all time. And then I will be very interested to see if this is how well Black Panther does. I really, like, there's been buzz for Black Panther for a long time. Infinity War, like, are people just not talking about that as much because Black Panther's, like, right here? It's like, you'd think, like, Infinity War, not just because it's an Avengers film, because it's, like, it's part 1. Still, I know it's not technically part 1 and part 2. It's this Avengers and then Avengers 4. But this is and Avengers 4 is going to be like the end of the Marvel Cinematic Universe as we know it, and it'll still keep going, but with like new heroes, new actors and stuff. But like this is like part 1 of the end, and this is going to be a huge shift for the Marvel Cinematic Universe. So I don't know. I feel like there's not as much buzz for that as I thought there would be, but I still think that might be the highest opening of a Marvel film, just because so much around it. I don't know. It's going to be hard to beat like the pure buzz of like the first Avengers film. So we'll see, but just super pumped. I got my tickets for Thursday, and it's exciting. And that's going to do it for this week. That's it. It was a slow week. I expected us to be a shorter show, and it was on the shorter end of things. But I thought it was still a fun one. Had some good variety, had some good topics on it. And I could keep rambling, but I'm not. I can already tell I'm just like grasping for stuff to talk about, and I just don't really need to talk about it anymore. Didn't find out what that film was that I was thinking of. But that's all right. We'll live. The world will live, and I'm going to stop rambling. So thank you, everyone, for listening. Tune in next week. We'll be talking all about Black Panther and how it did in box office, what records it did or did not break. Early man, probably have my response on what I ended up thinking about that one. Probably won't see Sampson, not going to lie. And we'll be talking about Annihilation. That's one of the big releases I'm excited for, and whatever news pops up. So come back then. And until then, I have been your host, Garret Neal. Thank you very much for listening, and you were listening to this show on Radio DePaul, Chicago's College Connection.